This is a review for Chapter 27. There will be 34 multiple choice questions, and then there will be 11 countries that you'll need to find on a map. So the entire test is worth 45 points. To start off with, we're going to talk about Josiah Strong. And in his book, Our Country, Its Possible Future and Its Present Crisis, Josiah Strong talked about the need to spread American religion and values throughout the world. The United States naval captain Alfred Thayer Mahan argued in his thesis that the control of the sea was the key to world domination or world power, and so he was a strong advocate of increasing our naval power. In order to do that, we needed to have coaling stations throughout the world. In order to do that, you needed to become expansionist and imperialist. The numerous near wars and diplomatic crises of the United States in the late 1880s and 1890s demonstrated that the nation had become a bit more aggressive in their mood and in their approach to world politics. One way in which we did this was in Hawaii, and one reason that the white American sugar lords in Hawaii, or the pineapple plantation owners in Hawaii, wanted to annex Hawaii, is that they feared that Japan might intervene in Hawaii if we didn't do it first. So it was a necessity for the United States to get in before the Japanese would get in. The Queen, I'll just call her Queen Lily Kalani of Hawaii, was removed from power because she had opposed the annexation of Hawaii by the United States. She insisted that the native Hawaiians should continue to rule and control Hawaii. Now we move into Cuba. The battleship Maine, the USS Maine, was officially sent to Cuba to protect and evacuate American citizens and to observe. The battleship was sunk. The USS Maine was sunk by an explosion on this ship. Of course, it was reported that it was the work of the enemies, and it led to rallying cries of war against Spain. President McKinley asked Congress to declare war on Spain, mainly because the American people demanded it. The United States declared war on Spain even though the Spanish had already agreed to sign an armistice with the Cuban rebels. It became fairly obvious that the reason we were going to go to war with Spain was primarily to help the Cuban people, but also we definitely had an interest in the Philippine island nations and their possible naval ports and coaling stations so that we could have an influence in the Pacific Rim. The Teller Amendment guaranteed that the United States would uphold the independence of Cuba. American military strength during the Spanish-American War came mainly from our new steel Navy and the improvement of our Navy. The Philippine nationalists then continued to fight an insurrection against, first of all, the Spanish rule, but then eventually they continued to fight against the United States occupation, and this was led by Emilio Aguinaldo. He was the Philippine nationalist who continued to lead the insurrection against the United States. When the United States captured the Philippines from Spain, Hawaii was also annexed as a territory. It was a key territory for the United States in the Pacific. So about the same time. So the time period is the same. However, Hawaii really has nothing to do with the Spanish-American War. Just an emphasis that the timing is about the same, approximately the same. The Rough Riders were an important military group that were principally formed and organized by Teddy Roosevelt. They were commanded, however, by Colonel Leonard Wood. The greatest loss of life for American fighting men during the Spanish-American War resulted from sickness in both Cuba and the United States, but disease spread was the main loss of life during the Spanish-American War. The most controversial event associated with the Spanish-American War was the acquisition of the Philippines, and during this war the United States became possessive of the Puerto Rico Islands, Guam, the Philippines, Manila, and Guantanamo Bay. Chronological order, you should know that the sinking of the Maine occurred, then we had the American Declaration of War on Spain, then the passage of the Teller Amendment, then the passage of the Platt Amendment. So first is the Maine sinking, then the Declaration of War, and then the Teller Amendment and the Platt Amendment. Spend some time knowing the difference between the Teller and the Platt Amendments. Many Americans became concerned about increasing foreign intervention in China because they feared that American missionaries would be jeopardized and the Chinese markets would also be closed to non-Europeans. And so we suggested an open door policy in China, and this was essentially to promote free trade in China so that the United States could get in and have an influence in China. The Boxer Rebellion in China then was an attempt by the Chinese to throw out or even kill all foreigners. Moving to Teddy Roosevelt, Roosevelt received the Republican vice presidential nomination in 1900 mainly because the New York party bosses wanted him out of the governorship. They thought they could promote him into the vice presidency and promote him into obscurity, never hear from him again. However, McKinley is assassinated and Roosevelt becomes president. Just before his nomination for vice president on the Republican ticket in 1900, Roosevelt served as the governor of New York. Roosevelt can best be described as a highly energetic individual, even egotistical and arrogant at times. Construction of an Isthmian canal was motivated mainly by a desire to improve the defense of the United States so that our Navy could be more rapidly deployed in either the Atlantic or the Pacific Ocean. An alternative route to Panama, seriously considered as a location for a canal, was Nicaragua. However, the Panamanian Isthmus ended up being the most efficient route. The United States entered the Hay-Buena-Varilla Treaty with Panama, the Hay-Pauncefote Treaty with Britain, and a gentleman's agreement with Japan. So those are 3 treaties that would be good for you to be familiar with: the Hay-Buena-Varilla Treaty, the Hay-Pauncefote Treaty, and the Gentleman's Agreement. The United States gained a perpetual lease on the Panama Canal in the Hay-Buena-Varilla Treaty. Teddy Roosevelt's role in the Panamanian Revolution involved using American naval forces to block Colombian troops from crossing the isthmus and crushing the revolt. Teddy Roosevelt wanted an Isthmian canal constructed quickly because the presidential election of 1904 was approaching. During the building of the Panama Canal, The difficulties encountered included labor troubles, landslides, poor sanitation, and yellow fever. The Roosevelt Corollary added a new provision to the Monroe Doctrine, and this said that the United States had justification to intervene in the affairs of Latin American countries. So it added to the Monroe Doctrine. The Monroe Doctrine says that all European nations must stay out of the Western Hemisphere. The Roosevelt Corollary says that not only must Europeans stay out of the Western Hemisphere, but the United States can justify intervention in the affairs of Latin American countries. And in 1904, there is a Russian-Japanese war, a Russo-Japanese war that started because Russia was seeking ice-free ports into the Pacific in Chinese Manchuria, some of the islands that are north of China or north of Japan, So there's a war that breaks out between Russia and Japan in 1904. Those are the 34 questions from chapter 27 that are multiple choice. In addition, you have a list on your study guide of countries, 11 countries that will be on a map quiz at the end of this test for a combined 45 points. That concludes the review for chapter 27 test.